All right, hi. We're here with some of the most powerful people in the state of Louisiana, including myself. I'm not going to forget myself. This is Real Talk. We want to thank Brother Jay, Brother Shaheed. We want to thank all of our participants that's here. This is Real Talk, and we are here to really do some real talk dealing with business in the state of Louisiana. I have to my right, which would be to your left, Brother Curtis, and I have to my left, which would be to your right, Sister Omari.
Yes.
Sister Omari. All right, let's just get right to it. It's going to be a 30-minute segment. We're not going to have any phone calls in, and we're going to just get directly to it. What exactly is voter suppression, Brother Curtis?
Voter suppression is something that's been happening to black people since we've had the right to vote. It's any way to make it harder for you to cast a ballot. It's when you might have seen a couple of weeks ago that they had two white paramilitary guys that showed up at a voter registration poll somewhere in the Midwest. That's voter intimidation, which is also voter suppression. You might have seen Governor DeSantis out of Florida send his election police to lock up ex-felons who had voted, who the state of Florida gave permission to vote. That's a form of voter suppression because it sends a chilling effect to the other 50-some-odd thousand legally registered voters that were ex-felons. So it's basically anything that gives us another hurdle to get over in order to vote. But I think Omari will probably be better to answer that question.
Sister Omari?
Well, first I want to thank you, Sister Khadijah, for having me on, Brother Jay. It is really an honor to be here to have this conversation. But, you know, I agree with Curtis. You know, voter suppression is any obstacle, any hurdle that black folks have to contend with, or any person has to contend with in order to vote, to cast their ballot. But it also comes in the form of misinformation, right? Which we're seeing a lot during this election that we're dealing with here. It can be something as simple as changing a polling location without the proper information. Think about New Iberia. In 2021, they had a demographer that came out, changed the districts. The parish voted in agreement and did not tell the people properly, right? And so people had to drive up to 30 miles to go and vote. Yes. That is voter suppression. You think about, today we learned about in Opelousas. They're dealing with 2 to 3 to 4 polling changes in 1 year. Mm-hmm. You know, and that is due to the decisions, and that is due to the vote of their elected officials, right? And so voter suppression is not something of the past. It is very real. It is not something that Louisiana is exempt from. It is something that happens right here at home. And, you know, a part of the work that we're doing now is to combat voter suppression, but also to hold the people, the players accountable who are participating and upholding it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I've been voting for like maybe about 55 years now, and never missed a day for voting. And then absentee voting was when my grandmother, she would always say, "Go ahead and make sure I'm registered to vote," because at that time you had to have a notary, a notarized notary in order to watch her do her signature. And now it's so much easier. You don't have no reason not to vote. Mr. Curtis, why do you think it's imperative that we vote and vote early?
And that's a good question as well. I've been traveling around the state for the last few days since early voting started. I went to vote myself in Caddo Parish. There were no lines there, but what was really striking about the situation is they didn't have an obvious sign that said early voting outside of the voting booth or outside of the voting station. The sign was inside of the voting station. And I felt like that's also a form of voter suppression. Now they said, well, the wind is blowing too much. I said, well, you want me to go buy y'all some rope to tie it down? Since the parish don't, seem like, well, they're like, well, I don't know. And not looking at that as a real problem, because people want to see, where am I supposed to go to vote? This is the time, and it should be red, white, and blue stuff everywhere around there to let people know this is where we vote right here. It's important to vote early, because remember a few years back in Florida, an election was stolen by waiting to see how many votes we was going to count on the last day. A whole presidential election happened. If we could vote early, those votes are definitely going to be counted. And that's the most important thing. And we don't have to deal with the long lines and the rigmarole of that day, right? So, in black people, we need to get there early. They always get there early, because on November 8th, the lines are going to be a little too long. And you don't like to wait, right?
Yes, indeed. We either going to a job or coming from a job.
Right.
Do you feel that women are taking this serious the way they're supposed to?
You know what? That is an interesting question, because I was thinking about that today, the role that women have played in getting our community out to vote. And the presidential election in 2020, I'm thinking of the sororities, the women's group at churches, the faith groups, mamas groups. I think women are continuing to play that role. But just taking it back to that voter suppression issue, right? Women are also mothers. We're also wives. We play a pivotal role that many times can keep us from really getting out to vote, right? And so women need the support of the community, because we are always playing that supportive role. Women who are playing these everyday roles of wife, of mother, of girlfriend, but even women with careers need support to be able to participate in their civic duty, because sometimes I feel, as a woman organizer, that a lot of the weight falls on us, and I, as a woman, want to play a deeper role in supporting our men to step in those positions of leadership, because so many resources, they say black women are one of the most educated demographics in the United States. I know that, yes, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, yes.
And so there have been many resources that have supported women, and we can leverage those resources to support our men. Because what I'm seeing in our community, whether it's through the penal system, through the justice system, through the education system, our men are being marginalized. And so there has to be solidarity, true solidarity within our community, between our men and our women, so we can continue to play that role. But also, I like to lead from behind, a strong man. So that's just me. That's just me.
Okay, all right. Well, we do know that if you were a convicted felon and you've been off of the papers for 5 years, you have the right to vote. Now, another thing with the voting, you need to also know that when you go there, try to have your Louisiana identification, try to have that with you. However, if you don't have a Louisiana ID or voter's registration card, no one is supposed to be turned away. All you have to do is just fill out a voter's registration affidavit. And on that affidavit, when you fill it out, you make sure that you know that, well, one of the questions, or what's your mother maiden name? What's your address? Those are some of the most simple and correct questions that you could ask, and no one is supposed to be turned away. So, Mr. Curtis, how do you feel knowing that we've come a long way, particularly with some of the idiotic politicians that Louisiana have? However, we still got much more to go. Particularly, can you elaborate on number 7. Amendment number 7.
Constitutional Amendment number 7. It's been strife with all kind of confusion around this issue. But let's tie it to voting for a second, because the reason that we even have a slavery exception clause in the Louisiana Constitution is because right after slavery and Reconstruction, Louisiana started having the most black African American political players in the country. We've had a governor, a lieutenant governor that was black. We've had representatives all over the state of Louisiana that was black, right? So during Reconstruction, something really wild happened. They started punishing black people for voting, for getting involved in the political system. They had good old boys and Ku Klux Klan members, Knights of the White Camellia, that came from Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, and murdered black people in the thousands, from Colfax, Louisiana, up to Bloody Cattle, back down to New Orleans, to take these positions of power away. So we were something like in the early 1900s, there were over like 70% of the black population was registered to vote. By 1910, I think there was only 2% of the black population in Louisiana registered to vote, right? And that's when the slavery exception clause came in the black codes, to put us back in a condition of slavery where you no longer had that civic right and that need to vote, to get out and control your neighborhoods, control your towns, control your cities, control your parishes and the state. So when we talked about earlier about women involved in the voting process, women now are the head of the black family because of the marginalization of black men through this constitutional loophole in slavery. Slavery is abolished except for those duly convicted of a crime. So once they convict you of a crime, you are back in slavery. So Amendment 7 is a vote yes would change that language to say slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited, period. Those two things become unlawful. The contention is because they have a subparagraph that says subparagraph 1 would not apply to the otherwise lawful activity of the criminal justice system, which is a responsible thing. Because, all right, we outlaw these first two things, which is a first step towards having progress of change in Louisiana. Now, a no vote for Proposition 7 or Amendment 7 would result in things being exactly as they have been for the last 157 years. Keep it the same with a no vote, change and take the slavery exception language out with a yes vote. And it's just as simple as that.
Yes, that really is a lot to really galvanize at this point. However, we're making it plain and simple English. We're talking to our community. We're talking to our community, and we're talking to you all with love and the intellect that we know you have. Now, my good sister, what do you believe when it comes down to a woman's body? Well, I'm gonna tell you how I feel. I feel no white man should tell me jack anything when it comes down to my body. However, you may have like a more upscale type of language.
I mean, honestly, for me, it's an individual thing. What I decide to do or not to do should not be dictated by law. Because what we're seeing, and what we've seen with not just this reproductive justice conversation, but with darn near everything that we talk about, we are seeing it being decided by courts that are mostly dominated by white men. What does a man, much less a white man, know about my body? Right? I haven't told or divulged anything about my body. And so therefore, why are policymakers, why are judges, why are courts, why is this system trying to tell me what to do? And so I think it comes down to a matter of personal moral ethics And there are so many other things that the highest court in the land, like the Supreme Court, or even our lower courts here on the state, could be talking about. You know, we've had a very in-depth conversation around criminal justice in the carceral system. That needs to be fixed. That is something that is actually a legal responsibility of our courts. It is not a legal responsibility for a court to tell me what to do in terms of my reproductive decisions. Now, if you want to talk to me about my reproductive decisions, let's talk about resources for my family. Let's talk about supporting single black mothers. Let's talk about actually inserting resources into our educational system. If you care about children so much, let's talk about what it actually takes to raise a child, educate a child, make sure a child lives. So many children are being involved too early into the criminal justice system, either through gun violence. Who's introducing those guns into the street? Let's have a conversation about that. Right, and so I think there are so many other things that we could be talking about, so many other ways to spend taxpayers' dollars, but unfortunately, our courts feel like it's incumbent upon them to take away our rights. And so, unfortunately, this is something that we are going to have to learn more about. You know, Couture, my colleague, said earlier that black people, we really are conservative, right? And so if we have this conversation around abortion in our community, many times, you know, we might find in a community we don't have an agreement around, we don't agree about abortions, right? And so, but I think that the reproductive conversation has been so whitewashed. Right? Black women are getting abortions, right? Black women are also choosing to have their children. So we need to understand the ramifications of both of those things within our community. We have to understand the policy talk, right? Because they are using this policy talk as code words to make decisions about our families and our communities, all the while behind their backs they're holding resources and keeping them from our families, right? And so let's get in the know. Let's learn more about this reproductive justice fight, because even if we don't agree with abortion, it is something that impacts our community. It is something that mothers in our community are utilizing as an option, a medical option. And then the maternal death rate in the state of Louisiana. People don't want to talk about that. And so this is something that, you know, I think this is a really important question. You know, I would like to learn more. But I want this to be, it's a tough conversation, but I want to see it happening more.
Yes. And we do know that 3 out of 5 black men in their productive years are either incarcerated or under some type of judicial system. When you say criminal, and I've told this to Brother Jay, exactly what is a criminal? Could it be a white man in a necktie working for the bank, steals millions of dollars and don't do any jail time? I mean, so we really have to have the conversation of redefining exactly what a criminal is, because more white collar crime is only a slap of the wrist. And when I say white collar crime, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Our white elected officials are those that are not. So Mr. Curtis, I know we have like maybe about 10 minutes left and everything, and I just want you to just reiterate, why is it so important to early vote? And early voting is from
October 25th to November 1st.
Okay, October 25th to November 1st. Why is it so important to do early voting?
Okay, and I want to piggyback on what you said, because all of this ties into our civic responsibility to vote. Most brothers and sisters in the African American community do not understand our multi-generational trauma that came from the terrorists that killed our forefathers, our great-grandmother, our sometimes our grandmother.
Yes, right.
You know, this is not that far away from the lynching photos that you've seen with the 4,700 lynchings that happened in Caddo Parish over a short period of time. And you see those people that were out there on the pictures with the lynchings. Those happened in the 1950s, the 1940s, and the 1960s. Most of those people are still alive. There are principles to murder. And if you want to talk about crimes in the community, those are thousands of principals. And some of those people were young enough to be judges right now. We need to figure out how to do a cold case study on with the new facial recognition technology that we have and hold those people accountable for the atrocities and the genocides that they've committed and that made us stop voting in the first place. Because we didn't just stop voting.
Yes.
You understand? We had communities that were vibrant and thriving and law-abiding, and it seems to me that the integration of black people into the American culture meant the disintegration of the black family structure. So right now we're to a point that 70-some-odd% of all black children are being born to single black females. That can't be happenstance. That's part of a design, and it's affected by the carceral system. But let me tell you how before we leave. This is called the weaponization of the criminal justice system. Historically, most of your district attorneys have been white men.
That's right.
Right? And you got to look at the legal system as a weapon. And they've turned the policing of the system towards marginalized black and Hispanic communities historically, right? It's not that everybody not doing crime. The Pew Charitable Trust study says that white people commit 8 times the number of crimes that black people commit. This is a white organization that done this study, and you guys can check it. The thing is, we don't send the police to go pat and stop and frisk the young white people that's on the other side of the town over there at ULL coming out their college, and you'll see that they have their mama Oxycontin in their pocket, or the Percocets, or the fentanyl, or whatever. That stuff carried 30 years. But if you're on the other side of the city and you see 2 little black boys walking down the street, they probably got a joint or something in their pocket, and the police know it, and he has authority to stop and mess with them. They are being policed on our side of town, and they're not being policed on the other side of town. So if you're looking for something, you're gonna find it. If you look for it in the white community, you're gonna find it. If you look for it in the black community, you're gonna find it. They're not looking for it in the white community though. So they only police our people, so it seems like we're the only ones doing crime.
Yes, indeed. And when you think about the Colfax massacre, right there in Alexandria, you know that, and I'm trying to show that black people, when they born, they're just good when they born, and it's all over. Here you have people that were in the military that wind up winning. The blacks wind up winning an election. The white men decided that, okay, well, I'm gonna get rid of them, and I'm gonna torture them, and
By force.
By force, and a lot of them had military skills. That's a big plus, because I was in the military too, so I know how to upload and download. I never experienced the type of weapons that they have today, but they teach us certain criteria. So saying that is like the only way that we can continue to show our voice is and fight is with the pencil and with our tongue. In closing, my sister, you so eloquently, this has just been such a good program, and I'm looking forward to you all coming back. It's been so eloquently a pleasure to sit down and talk consciousness and talk about what's going on in our community. Through the election, with the election, y'all still gonna be on the ground floor.
Oh yeah. One thing about Black Voters Matter that's said often is that, we are a voting organization. We believe in voting rights. We fight for voting rights. We believe in mobilizing people around voting. But at the core and at the foundation of who we really are, we are a power building organization.
That's right.
Right? It's about building power for black people. And that doesn't just happen during an election. Right? And so we are 365 doing the work. And here in Louisiana, Couture and I and all of our partners across the state, our grassroots black-led organizations that we work with, we are building movement. And we are building a local infrastructure for movement. And so, what I say to the people many times is, what role do you play? what role do you want to play? Where do you envision yourself in this work? Because it doesn't just end on November 8th or during the runoff on December 10th. It doesn't end when early voting is done. It continues. Why? Because our problems persist. And so even if you don't feel like you have the academic education or the intellect, there is a role for you. And so I beckon our people to determine what that role is and to play it fully.
Right.
Yes, you can visit our website at blackvotersmatterfund.org. You can also visit us on our social media page on Facebook at Black Voters Matter Louisiana. And then from that page you can find everything else. Okay, and also you can visit asapworldwide.org. All Streets, All People ASAP is an organization that is working to build a sense of urgency around long-term systems change. Because as we said, it's going to take a long time to do this work, but we have to have just as much urgency as we do when we get out in the streets and protest.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Curtis.
And you can get me on the gram at curtis.davis. You can hit me on Facebook at Curtis Davis. You can hit me at Decarcerate Louisiana on Facebook, Decarcerate Louisiana on Instagram, Slave State Decarcerate on Instagram, and our website is abolishslavery.us. Peace.
Yes, yes, indeed, and you could find me on Brother J website. Also, I always say this in dealing with gun violence. How do you kill somebody that look exactly like you? You need to show love and respect and just community outreach when it comes down to your brother, your sister, and let's just go ahead and fight the real demons, and you know exactly who they are. Thank you. Thank you. Hi again. We're here in New Orleans at Dulles University, and the DOJ, Department of Justice, is here, and they wanted to do get feedback from the community and of course from the work that you all have been doing, the ACLU, dealing with state policemen and the problems that we've been having with the state policemen. Ms. Atlanta, please tell us how you feel with this fantastic program.
Oh, yes. So first of all, I just want to thank you and our community in Lafayette for coming down to New Orleans to support us. We are incredibly encouraged by the turnout that we saw tonight at Dillard University. We knew that it was going to be of the utmost importance to involve our community members, to hear their stories, to lift up their stories, and have that information be presented directly to DOJ in order to ensure the kind of thorough investigation that is going to be necessary to hold police accountable. And what we heard tonight were riveting stories of brutal beatings, life being taken, and corruption and abuse. And what we also saw is that the Louisiana State Police, as a state police agency, are involved in every police agency in this state. They are not just sitting in Baton Rouge. They are in every parish. They are involved in local investigations. They are rubber stamping corruption that is happening across this state, and our community members spoke to that point.
Yes. And again, our voice is our voice with our evidence is our way to fight. We have to talk about the corruption. We have to talk about the way that they have been handling the different investigation. Mr. Reverend Victor White Sr. was here also. I wanted to get an interview with him, but I think he had to leave. And so where are we going to go from here, Ms. Salina?
Yes. So where we go from here is that the DOJ began their investigation on June 9th of 2020. They have told us that they will be on the ground investigating the state police over the next 12 to 18 months. And so on the community engagement side, what that will look like is a series of events like we held here in New Orleans tonight. We will be in Lafayette. I can make sure and tell you that we will be in Lafayette. We will be in Baton Rouge. We will be in Shreveport and Monroe. We will be in some locations to ensure rural communities, northern part of the state, to make sure that the DOJ officials are really understanding the pervasiveness of what's going on, and also the specific nature and the way that this kind of corruption takes place in rural communities. Because what I want the DOJ to understand and know is that many of these troopers and officers that are abusing people, they know these community members. They have been abusing and harassing these community members for years and decades. So this is not a question of, state police officers who are on an interstate and stopping people that they don't know. No, these are people who are hunting certain community members. As we heard, there are certain nights that certain community members, black people, are hunted down. So the rural communities are where we really have to spend time and focus attention, and we have to make sure that DOJ can understand how to do that work alongside us.
Yes. And the telephone number, if anybody wanted to reach you, would be what, Miss Elena?
Yes. So if you want to reach us at the ACLU, the best place to reach us is our online. So www.laaclu.org. We have all the information for the DOJ. So I don't want to say the email of the DOJ because I'll probably mess it up here. But if you go to our website, just click on the Justice Lab tab. You'll see the DOJ investigation. The email will be there and the telephone number will be there. You can reach out to those two ways, email or by telephone. If you have information that you want to share with police, if you have information that you want to share with us, you can reach out to us on our website. And I want to just say thank you so much. This is a community, specifically in Lafayette, that is so engaged, that has been a supporter of the ACLU and specifically of my leadership since I began 4 years ago. And we could not do this work in black communities without black leaders and activists and advocates like you, Miss Khadijah, who speak your truth, who are so courageous, and who continue to believe, right? Who continue to believe and show up and invest in our people the way we need to be invested in. So I just want to thank you as well.
I want to thank you. Continue to work because you all give us that boost that we really need.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.